moved to Seattle from Zambia in 2001, and with a strong desire and an intention to record music for the first time in my life. And that would have been, I was like 27, I think. Yeah, about 27 years old. I had written music for a long time. From the time of my first rhyme when I was 12 years old. Like, I've been writing raps for a long, long time, but never had the opportunity to get into a studio and record stuff, right? And so, moving to Seattle from Zambia, I was like, okay, this is my opportunity, right? Like, I'm gonna get into a studio, and so I did that as Scion. I put out the first album in like the EP called Apostrophe, Scion Apostrophe in 2002. And then I followed that up with a full-length album called Live and Learn, I think in 2003 or 4. And on Live and Learn, there were 2 tracks that Sabzi produced. There was The Water and Serious Concern. And I mean, they were standout tracks on the album. Everything else was produced. Some were live band. It was like live drumming and some chopped and looped instrumentation, and some of it was just me on a drum machine. It was bad. Like, the production quality, I'd just say it was like it was subpar. And here came Sabzi, and it was like, damn, these 2 tracks were like hella standout tracks. We were introduced to each other by way of the Baha'i faith. We had a religion in common, and so like fellow and mutual Baha'i friends said, oh, you're a rapper, he's a producer, you guys should definitely fuck with each other. And so that's how we were even introduced. He was, Blue Scholars was a thing. Sabs and Gio were both students at UW. This would have been 2004 or 5, right when Blue Scholars thing was really starting to gel. And so they put out their album, and then I had these 2 tracks produced by Sabzi. We started talking about doing a little EP project of our own. That turned into Common Market. I mean, the project really was born out of that, and like a lot of great projects, you've heard it before, it was just kind of born by accident, right? It was Scion and Sabzi present Common Market, or Scion and Sabzi are Common Market. And the original album cover, you can still find it in a Google search. You'll still see it has both of our names, and then it says Common Market. So that was the name of the project and the album. And yeah, it was a little confusing. Is it like a Gangstar thing? Where you have Premier and you have Guru, and together they're Gangstar. And, so even from the beginning, there was an identity crisis, I think, for Common Market. Our opportunities were greater than a lot of folks had before us, you know what I mean? And that drew a lot of attention, drew a lot of criticism. It also drew a lot of admiration. It was a weird position to be in. And especially with this identity crisis, like Sabzi and I didn't really know what to do with this thing, Common Market, because it became more popular than either one of us had really anticipated. I never intended on leaving my job, it was just like music was a hobby for me. At this point, Sabs and Gio and Blue Scholars was a big thing. Like, I mean, that's when they were selling out Showbox, man, and doing multi-nights. And respect to everybody who's selling out the Showbox. Shout out to Saul, shout out to all the locals who are selling out Showbox. But to the best of my knowledge, I think the Scholars are still the only ones that have done like a successful multi-night run. The way that like Rhyme Sayers have done in Minneapolis, like that shit is hard to pull off, doing multi-nights and selling that shit out. Like Scholars were on that upward trajectory, and I didn't want to leave the security of a full-time job, the steady paycheck, and most importantly, the health insurance. It's like my health has always been an issue. The Mass Line release party at the Showbox in June of 2006, man. If you go back and look at the footage, like, I was hella sick, man. I had a drainage tube in my stomach. And, I had just come out of the hospital like 2 weeks before that, and I was on heavy medication. And Bumbershoot was another one where I performed our Bumbershoot set in 2007 with a drainage tube attached to my leg. So anyway, health has always been just something that held me back. And whether or not I let it hold me back, or whether it was a real a barrier for me, I don't know. I have tried to figure that out for a long time. But now here I am, about a year and a couple of months out of my most recent surgery, and I'm not feeling strong, you know what I'm saying, like physically strong. In fact, I'm very weak. It's like the sit-ups and the push-ups, it's like I'm still very much physically weak, but I'm coming back physically. But more importantly is my mental state.
We fought the enemy with more than afforded. We storming the port of entry, the memory of the
right here in this neighborhood are some of the world's brightest minds trying to solve some of the world's most complicated problems and issues. And if you tap into that, I don't even mean in a literal way. I would love to be able to dialogue with some of these folks, and even if you just tap into the sentiment or the energy, if you will, you know, there's something real about that. There's something real about being in the middle of this city right now. There's a lot of tension and conflict and change and growth and expansion, and there's so many things that are happening in this city right now, but I'm grateful to be here right now and just kind of experiencing all this stuff. It is a great time to be alive. I'm grateful to feel alive.
Last profound effect on my volume plus the readiness to feel it in the field. You should hear what they call.
I've not been paying enough attention for the last several years, but I intend to, because especially to the music that young people are making. That's why, you know, association with Vera Project is important to me, because being involved with youth, watching the youth move, being sensitive to their concerns, to their ambition, is important to me. So you see that, you hear it through a lot of the music that they make, and it's easy to be super dismissive of, you know, like mumble rap, and that's kind of a trope now or whatever. But you know, it's just like, oh, they're not really saying anything, or, you know, it's just Well, I mean, they were saying the same shit about, you know, my raps when I was rapping at 13 or 14. And I felt like I was saying something. The homie Gabe says it's about movements, not idols. You know what I mean? And so the more effort we can put forth to not make it about Young Thug, but about the Young Thug movement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that in my mind, that's what you're identifying. Is he's saying that he gets a lot of credit for being a cultural innovator, but it's not him. You know what I mean? He's a vehicle or a vessel as well, and so you recognize the importance of the movement. Nipsey too, man. Like, you see the influence, you know, of Nipsey's work, community work. It's about the movement, not just about Nipsey. But I mean, obviously, that leaves an enormous void when the man himself, the individual himself, it's not just about a man per se, but yeah, that void, you know, there's this rush now. People are looking like, who's going to be the next Nipsey? That's unfortunate, you know. It's like the movement, and this is not, the movement has to sustain the individual, right? And I believe that it will, and I think that, you know, that's what makes this medium so powerful. This medium of music so powerful. Is you can just transform, I think, so many people's lives with your words, and that's not a power to play with, you know. And I neglected it for a long time, you know. I mean, I've always tried to be mindful of the words that I say. But more so than ever before, I'm realizing the importance and the influence of words, you know, and meaning and intent, you know. And so I don't know how I got here from there. So movements, not idols. I got the name from a store on, 10th, before it becomes Broadway, or Roanoke. You know, the Roanoke exit off of I-5 right there at you're on the north end of Capitol Hill, and then I think you go up 10th before it turns into Broadway. This would have been in, like, you know, 2001, 2002. There was this little corner store, convenience store market over on the right-hand side, and it was called the European Common Market. And I was working in that neighborhood at the time when we were recording, And like, I remember making a list of names. Like, I'm that dude that's like, okay, we got to come up with a group name. And I sat down with like pen and pad, and I was like, I came up with some ridiculous names. Moon Looters is one that I remember specifically. So I was just like, that is ridiculous, man. Moon Looters. But yeah, that could have been our name. We settled on Common Market. And it's not that it had any direct significance. Like, it didn't mean one thing. But it felt like it had the potential. It felt like it had implications. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Obviously, accessibility was a big thing for us. Like, our music was never exclusive the way that some rap music is exclusive. You know, accessibility. That's the commonality. Yeah, it was about sharing thoughts and ideas. You know, this marketplace that wasn't necessarily like a stock market, but more like a cultural bazaar, you know. So that's what the Common Market aesthetic was all about, and I just thought it kind of sounded tight, man. Like, you saw some of the early merch designs and stuff. You know, it was kind of tight. It was like there's this symmetry going on. It's like the 6 letters and 6 letters, and, you know, that type of thing. So Common Market was just, I don't know. It clicked.
On that frame, the shot pop, a name say the game soft be the will of him who won.
So after, it was right around 2005, late 05, we had put out that original Common Market album, just as a, like, I'm talking like hella indie release, like straight out the trunk type shit. And my wife took it down to LA to play it for KRS. We were trying to get an endorsement from KRS-One, and we got it. And that was like, it was just a big deal for me, right? Like, I mean, like, it was a big deal. Like, I thought I thought that was the pinnacle of my success, and up until that point, it had been. So anyway, 2005, we got this endorsement from KRS, and we were running with it a little bit, you know. We did the KRS show here at Chop Suey, you know, and that led to a meeting with Dave Minert and Fused Music. And so that's where things started to feel like they were getting official, to a degree. It's like, it was no longer just like us making music in the attic studio up on Beacon Hill just for the fun of it. It was like this could be a business, or this could be, you know, this could be that thing that we were dreaming about as kids. You know, like, wouldn't it be cool to be a rap star? So that traction, again, this was simultaneously happening as the Blue Scholars, were rising. And so when Common Market met with Fused Music and kind of, agreed on a deal, it made a lot of sense for Blue Scholars to be a part of that deal as well. And so then became Massline. It was Common Market, Blue Scholars, and then we formed Massline, which included Gabe, and loosely kind of like Khalil and Abyssinian Creole, and then Step Cousins, which was Macklemore, Candid. It was like we had some extended family too as well. Like that was the idea behind Massline. And so then, at that point, it was like, okay, who's in this business, right? And what roles do we have in the business? And that would have been 2006. And if this is my recollection of it all, I'll put my story up against anybody else's, but it's like, this is how I remember the story. I had told Minert and Fused and the homies, and I was like, look, I'm not planning on leaving my job. Like, I can't do this full time because I need the paycheck, I need the health insurance. Like, I don't mean to be redundant, but like, there was a point when I said I'm not committing myself to Massline as a full-time job or as a business. It's like, I just want to write raps. And there was this collective agreement that was like, okay, cool, we'll call you when we need you, And it was like, bro, that was no shit. It was like, I went to a few more meetings or whatever after that, but I was not really involved in any of the business decisions or any of, like, I didn't understand, and it didn't bother me at the time either. But obviously that was, it was not smart on my part, right? Just to say I don't want to be involved in a business like that I was actually involved in. I was just being lazy or negligent, or like, I didn't want to put the work in, right? And so I don't know what happened by 2009. Again, that was 2006 is like when we formed Massline officially. Bayani was, Bayani, I think would have been the first Massline release in 07. That's right. So, again, Bayani, like, there was a machine behind Bayani that I'd never been a part of before. Again, I had just moved here in 2001 from Zambia. I was writing raps out in the bush. And moved here, and I was just like hungry to get into a studio. And then, like, a few years later, here we were with like, we're sitting down with like record label executives on the phone. And, like, we have a real manager, and there's like, it was tight. But again, it was like I'm not ready to. It was such a foreign experience for me, or such an unfamiliar experience for me. And also, it was like, okay, we're sitting here, whether we were in the studio or in our manager's office, it was like I wasn't getting paid, you know what I mean? I was used to being on the clock. It was like, okay, I'm getting $12 an hour, but at least I know I'm on the clock right now. And in the artist world, it's not like that. You're not on the clock. It's like you put in the work, you know what I'm saying? It's not the same type of hustle and grind. Yo, I mean, there's a lot of smart people out here in this music business, man. Like, don't kid yourself thinking, like these cats are out here just like living a pipe dream or whatever. There's some really sharp people out here or whatever. And you're right, it takes business acumen to be successful out here. And so, yeah, I don't know how else to say it other than like I think I just wasn't really built for the music business, at least at that time. I didn't want to be involved in the music business, and I would even tell myself things like, well, it compromises your artistic integrity. It's like if you worry about art as a commodity, or the value of your raps, or how do you sell or promote or distribute, and I was like, no, it's all just I just want to write raps. So I backed out of Massline as a business, as a label, and then what I think I realized much later was as a community. It's like the homies were spending a lot of time together, like as a family, as a community. They build together, they break bread together. Yeah. It's like if you're not a part of that, it's like it doesn't really matter if you show up at the studio or at the business meeting or whatever. It's just like there's music as a business, and then there's the community there's an artist community, right? And I think what I realized was I was in a way disconnected from both, and so I was just floating for a while. September 2008 was Tobacco Road release party. That was September 2008, Numos, sold out show. Big deal, Tobacco Road. We had it was on a label, small independent label out of LA, but I mean we had backing. Again, it was like a machine there, and we were poised, to see what was next. But keep in mind, I'd already made it clear that I'm a little bit hesitant about I wasn't 100%. We had a conversation earlier about what it means to be 100%, and everybody around me knew I wasn't 100%. That's not their fault, you know what I'm saying? Like it was definitely on me. Like I was not fully committed to Common Market as whatever it could have been. So I was holding back a little bit. Sobs had the Blue Scholars thing on lock. I mean, they were still riding the wave from Bayani even when Tobacco Road came out, right? So there came a point where Sobs told me just straight up, he's like, I can't be two places at one time. You're gonna have to find somebody else to DJ. I mean, it was just the reality of the situation. It's like straight up, you got to find somebody else to DJ. And so I did. And it wasn't very long before, we started, folks were calling him like the Sobstitute. And it was like, we went to live shows and it was like, where's Sobsy? And in Bellingham, folks were like, Sobsy, like in the middle of our fucking show or whatever. And I was like, bro, I was pissed. Like, that's just, fuck that shit.
You were still performing it as Common Market at that time?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because this is, we had a brand new album out, and it was like, we were looking at offers for respectable tours. We hopped on a tour with People Under the Stairs. I took a young homie with me who wasn't even, he was 19 or 20 years old. We played our set and he would have to go outside and wait in the car because he was too young to even be in the club. Like, I don't know, man. It was a fucked up position to be in, as, like I said, being on the verge of something and kind of waiting. But again, it was like, that was my decision. This is embarrassing now. This is where you could edit and cut this footage. I was impatient. Like, we had recorded Tobacco Road, and Vitamin D mixed it. You know, it was nice. Man. It was sounding real plush. They convinced me to take time mixing it, you know, and like let's sit with this for a little bit and let's shop it, you know, because I'm hella impatient, always have been. I was like, yo, if you record something in the studio, like, it's definitely out within the next 24 to 48 hours. I had never had a manager before. I'd never been a part of this process before, and you know, we had a good manager. Like, I'm not going to get into that whole thing, because I don't want to make any excuses or justifications or defenses for Dave Minard on that. Well, he was always nice to me, type shit. Never did anything bad to me, type shit. I'm not even trying to go there with that. You know what I'm saying? But I'm saying, like, we had a good management team behind us. We had a good machine behind us, and again, it was like, okay, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And I'm the type of person that, like, I need direction. You know, I need somebody to tell me, okay, do this, and then most of the time I can get that done. But we were just kind of standing there like, well, okay, what are you gonna do with this? What are you gonna do with this? And there wasn't enough clear direction, I think, from me. I didn't know what to do. I really didn't know what to do, and so I just ran back to what was familiar, which was a job. So yeah, I even stopped. The offers became less and less, and I even passed on a few offers outright, and then, you know, that was kind of it. You know, it was like, it was unspoken. Obviously, there was never a point where they said, okay, Common Market is done and over, and you guys aren't doing it anymore. But there was a period of maybe 6 or 8 months where, like, I didn't even get a phone call or an email or nothing. Like, there was just no communication whatsoever. So I go back to Fused, or to, there were even a couple times when I just went to Sobs directly, and I was like, yo, do you want to make another album? Do you want to do a show? And the timing was just never right. And then, you know, I'm pretty sure he moved a couple of times. You know, he left Seattle. Sobs hasn't lived here for years now, I think. And you know, after he moved, it was like we hardly ever saw each other or communicated. And then as the shows or the offers for shows would come in, they would be funneled through my wife. You know, my wife managed me for a long time as Scion, but also as Common Market, because that's where the offers were. It's like, yo, is Common Market gonna do a show? And that was hard to manage for a long time, because obviously everybody wanted Common Market. I released so there was Tobacco Road, there was the Winter's End EP, and then that was pretty much that was the last of the recorded Common Market material. It's been years. Let's see, I remember when I started a job at the corner of First and Virginia. I was managing a high-rise building there. I had started in, it would have been 2015, so maybe 2016, I think he stopped by. It was definitely when I had just started working at that building. So my guess is 2016, we had about a 15-minute face-to-face conversation that was mostly about Dave B. and how dope Dave B is. I say is because, you know, I don't want to say was. The conversation was in the past, but Dave B is still dope. You know what I'm saying? So it was not. It was a. There's no bad blood, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we had another conversation right now, I think that it would probably go similarly. You know, maybe we would talk more about Dave B, or, you know, it's just like we don't talk about making music. That's for sure. I can't see that happening. I really can't see that happening. And what's interesting is that up until very, very recently, like, I mean, within the last week or two, I was content, or I thought I was content, to just leave that alone, to just let it die, you know, let it go. Like, you know, that's how relationships are, right? Like, people come in and out of your life, and it is what it is, but and that's okay. Like, I'm definitely at peace with my relationship with Sobs, but like, this thing that we made together deserves more attention. It deserves more care, and it deserves it deserves to continue living, right?